One thing you guys got to admit is I always give you exactly what you asked for. A few of you guys said you wanted to see me use some older guns. So today, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to test out the LPH400 or the Luma III, but then I realized the Luma III that I have, it's the 1.5 with the OP cap, is really a clear coat gun. So I figured what we'll do is use the LPH400 to lay our base, and then we'll use the Luma III to lay our clear. So the LPH400 we're using today is a 1.3, and we have the orange cap on here. Now, for those of you who didn't know, the orange cap was designed specifically for metallic colors, which when I learned that, I thought that was pretty interesting because I have never heard of a gun specifically being designed for metallics, or an air cap at least. So naturally, I was curious and I wanted to get a closer look at the air cap. So for those of you who have a bunch of paint guns and are familiar with looking at air caps, what do you notice about this air cap? For me, the first thing I noticed was the center holes are enormous compared to, for example, my LS400. I mean, look at the size difference in those holes. Now, the purpose for this design for metallics is essentially to allow for a softer atomization. This way your metallics don't stack when they hit the panel. I decided I wanted to take this off and get a closer look in the back of the gun. And what I noticed was pretty interesting. The fluid tip is exactly the same as my LS400, and the interior design of the gun is exactly the same as the LS400. The gun itself is very light. It feels very nimble in your hand, so that's great for a base coat gun. You want to feel like you have control over your gun. It's going to make you feel like you have control over your paint. And having control over your paint is exactly what you'd want, especially when you're doing a blend. Let's check out the fan on this thing. So I have it turned in just a touch. That's a really interesting pattern. It's very different from the modern guns. It's very center heavy and kind of flares off at the top and the bottom just a little bit. But overall, a very wide pattern, which makes sense for metallic colors. You'd want a wide fan for your metallics because that's going to allow for a consistent overlap and an even finish. This gun, it's putting out a lot of material, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's overloading the panel, if that makes sense to you. For me personally, when I use a SATA and the droplets are just enormous, I feel like it's always just too much material going on the panel. And there's hardly any overspray at all with this gun. First impressions are it's very similar to my LS400. Now, one thing that I could say that is immediately apparent is how much longer this paint is taking to dry. It's very unusual that a wet first coat like that ever takes more than 10 minutes to dry. It's been at least 12 minutes and this panel's still wet. Take a look at that. Which, if you want to lay even metallics, makes a lot of sense because metallics don't come out of the gun perfectly. They need time to flow out. If they did come out of the gun perfectly, we'd have a lot more painters. We'll throw our second coverage coat on, start blending her out a little bit. It's amazing how, with as much material as this gun puts out, and it is more than your traditional guns, it still atomizes it so beautifully. I want to show you guys something on this bumper real quick. You ever seen this before? It's gonna be hard to see on camera. See all these little dots? Now, I noticed this before I even put my sealer on. You guys ever have your shop order the wrong bumper and they don't realize it till after you painted it? And then you pull one of those paint it black and send it back things real quick. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with this bumper. All right, now I went ahead and raised the pressure on this to right under 2 bar, just to see if I can get it to dry quicker, because I don't want to wait that long again. Wow, this, I mean, I think, if I'm being totally honest with you guys, Iwata makes the best guns. They really do. The way it just goes on so evenly and so smooth and covers effortlessly. You guys know, my main thing is I want a gun that works for me, not a gun that makes me work. Yeah, this bumper was 1000% painted before, because like, what the hell even is that? Luckily the plate goes there, so I'm not gonna worry about it. But as for the holes, I'm gonna show you guys how I'm gonna take care of it. Obviously you saw I sanded it down, but when we do our drop coat, we're gonna take care of that as well. Okay, we're set for our drop coat. I'm gonna put it down with about 15 PSI, and that's how it's looking. So another thing that Iwata was going for when they made this cap was making it extremely easy to do your drop coat, which is obviously crucial for your metallic colors. And I think it's safe to say they knocked it out of the park. This cap does a beautiful job at allowing the material to stay wet and atomizing at a low pressure, but not over atomizing. That would cause some issues with your metallics and your pearls as well. I mean, look at how uniform that drop coat went on, and I didn't even have to put any effort into it. Just did a normal drop coat, and my panel looked like absolute suede. So we're gonna cover these scratches, and then what I'm gonna do over here for these holes, I'm gonna lower my pressure even more. So I don't know, I'm at about 5 PSI. You see how much bigger those droplets are? I'm basically gonna try to make like a bridge for my next drop coat, which I normally don't do 2 drop coats, but for my drop coat to sit on top of and kind of fill everything in. So you can see how big those droplets are on that panel right there. We'll let that dry about halfway, then we'll bump this back up to around 15 PSI. So 15 PSI, we'll go right over that textury drop coat we just left. Hit our air cap. And we'll come back over here. And that's it. That LPH400 with the orange cap may very well be the answer to those of you who are struggling with your metallics. So if you are struggling with your metallics or your pearls, I would highly recommend that gun. That gun gets a 11 out of 10. I mean, I don't see any single way that that gun could be improved. Now, as much as I would love to try shooting the clear with that LPH400, we have another gun on the agenda for today, and that is the Exodus Luma III with the 1.5 OP setup. So I took this gun apart already. The air cap looks pretty standard, although I will say the air holes on it are larger than most clear coat guns. Generally, your clear coat guns are going to have smaller holes in your air cap than your base coat guns. Now, the next thing I noticed was, well, first of all, this is the lightest gun I ever held in my life. This thing feels like a toy in my hand. It doesn't even feel like a gun. So for production guys, that's a big plus, because we all know holding a gun up here all day could get kind of tiring. Same thing with this fluid tip. It's extremely small. Other than that, I mean, it's a pretty standard fluid tip, just really small. And then I noticed they have a air distribution ring, and behind that, the way the air actually gets delivered here is very, very, very similar to my gun and to the DeVilbiss Pro lights. You kind of see the same kind of slits back there behind the distribution ring. And this is like just a plastic ring. So, I mean, I guess it's held up. These guns have a great reputation. So I'm going to drop this thing back in there. Well, I'm real close to losing my shit because I'm trying to put this thing back on and it has these little metal pieces that obviously sit in there, which cool, I can get them in there, no problem. But then when I try to put it in the gun and get it to line up with these two holes, it's impossible. I've been here 10 minutes trying to do this. I'm really close to giving up, but I'm gonna try and get this done for you guys. I don't get the design behind. I really don't. I mean, once you put this in, if it's not lined up perfectly, there's no way you could turn this thing or twist it. So I don't know. I was thinking trying to put the metal pieces in there first and then dropping the plastic distribution ring in. But if I drop the metal pieces in first, they could go somewhere in the gun they shouldn't be, and then the whole gun's garbage. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to figure this out and then pick you guys up when we're ready to start laying clear. By the grace of God, I got it. What I ended up doing was kind of tilting the top out and watching the two things line up and then pushing it in. So I'm gonna finish putting this thing back together. All right, we're in the booth with our Luma 3. I have my pressure set right at 2 bar. Fan, fluid, both wide open. Here's how our fan looks. The fan kind of reminds me of a WS400 or kind of like the PRD 717 as well. It's a very soft looking fan and it doesn't look like it's putting out too much material. How that's possible with a 1.5 on it, I'm not sure, but we're gonna find out. All right, here we go, first coat. If any of you guys have this gun, let me know how you use it. Do you leave the fan wide open? Do you leave your fluid wide open? So, for immediate first impressions, very impressed. I have heard a lot of good things about this gun, but I just haven't had a chance to give it a shot yet. Now, usually when a fan looks very thin, they tend to be top and bottom heavy. But with this one, it's actually very uniform. So it's definitely not the fastest gun. It really does put the material on with a very fine droplet. But I do think I'm gonna be able to lay a nice flat paint job with this gun. On our second coat, I'm definitely gonna slow down, but for a first coat finish, it's looking pretty good. So after our first coat, my impressions are, being that the atomization is so fine, you're not gonna be able to really move fast with this gun, but you are gonna be able to get a great finish, that's for sure. I do think this would be a great gun for a beginner or an apprentice to go out and pick up, because it does seem like it would be hard to get in trouble with this gun because it's generally a slower gun, like I mentioned, which I'm kind of shocked by, because when you hear a 1.5 setup, you think, wow, this gun's gonna really blast material out. But being that the atomization is so high with this gun, it really does a great job of breaking up that material as it leaves the gun. And I'm a really big fan of the fan. It's very even and not too large. Now, for our second coat, I'm gonna go ahead and dial the fan in 1 full turn to try to speed things up a little bit, but I'm also gonna go a little closer to the panel to see how flat of a finish I could really get with this gun. All right, here we go. I got our pressure right under 2 bars, so I lowered it, as I always do for my second coat. Now, I do want to try to go closer on this coat, but I'm kind of scared to go too close. Not to speed things up, but generally the closer you go, within reason, obviously, the smoother of a finish you're going to be able to get. Looking pretty good. Now our fender. It is looking absolutely beautiful. Let's give all this a little bit to flow out. We'll come back in. I'll give you my rating on the gun and we'll see how everything comes out. All right, here's our finished product. You can see this got a really, really, really nice flat finish. That is beautiful, low OEM texture, like you see on these Japanese cars very often. And our fender is, I mean, it's flawless. The gun really did a great job. I have to admit, I am impressed and maybe even shocked a little bit. I didn't have high expectations for the gun, being that it's not a very common gun that you hear of too many people using, but all in all, the thing delivered a great finish. Now, me personally, it's not my style of gun. I like guns, when I'm clear coating, I prefer the gun to be a little faster, not too fast, just on the fast side. This gun, I feel like to get it where I like it personally, I'd have to really turn the fan in a lot, and that usually gets you in trouble. And you don't really want to have too small of a fan when you're painting. But like I said earlier, it's a great gun for a beginner or an apprentice to go pick up for sure. My final rating on the gun is going to be an 8.8 out of 10. And yes, that LPH400 got an 11 out of 10. I don't care. That's the best base coat gun I've ever used. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, if you got any value out of it, or if you were entertained, if you could, please drop a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it helps out the channel a bunch. Until the next time, guys. Peace!